Hello, and thanks for tuning in to M Compass Media. I'm your host, Finbar Markey. M Compass Media, and particularly our co-founder, Anna Kavanagh, regularly brings you news about the harrowing experience of mothers and fathers too that have reported the abuse of their children, only to have their children removed from their care and sometimes even given into the care of the abuser. Bernard Durkin TD has repeatedly raised not only this issue, but the general abusive nature of family courts in the Dáil, but to no avail. Recently, I was contacted in relation to the case of Edward Hernon and several other men who were accused of abusing their children by agencies of the state, but who challenged those life-altering accusations and after many years were exonerated with official public apologies and compensation payouts. I interviewed Edward Hernon recently, who was accused by health officials of abusing his daughter. Edward spent over 25 years seeking justice and finally received an apology and compensation, as did his daughter and her mother in 2011. I think it's important to make clear that M Compass Media is in no way minimising the sexual abuse of children, but rather we're highlighting how pathological organisations can abuse and manipulate information and ruin the lives of parents for reasons that are beyond comprehension. Whether it's the cruel isolation of parents that actually report genuine abuse, or the hounding of parents that faced persecution through accusations of abuse by the state, certain factors appear to be ever present. Edward Hernon is now 81 years old. In our first conversation, he said to me, Finbar, I'm at the end of my life. I have a room full of files about this. I don't want to see them go into a skip and be forgotten. I would like my story on public record. Join me as we listen to Edward's story.
1985, I left Dublin to go work in London. And I left behind a family of 5. And I separated from my wife, taken up another relationship. And there was a daughter born from that relationship. When I left Dublin, she was aged 4 years old. And I went to London and I brought them over to London for Christmas. Mother and child. And the mother was getting the child ready for bed one evening when she noticed blood on her underpants. And she took the child, to a local doctor the next day, a Dr. Talahani, and he referred her to the Children's Hospital in Hackney. They examined the child and their decision was that the little graze on the child's vulva was the child's own manipulations. There were no indications of sexual abuse. Mother returned to Dublin. No, but they told her to come back in 10 days. But she returned to Dublin within 2 days. Things didn't suit her in London. She got lonely for her own family. So she came back to Ireland. And we did not keep in touch. And rumors started in London in mid-1986 that Brenda had come back to Dublin and taken the child because I had done something to the child. The person spreading the rumors was a first cousin. There was nothing I could do in London. I did not know exactly what was going on. When I came home in February of '87, after the little flat had been burgled, and it was then she told me all this stuff. She told me about the psychologist up in St. James's. She told me about the social worker down in Lord Edward Street. She told me about the doctor down in the Rotunda Hospital. And begged me not to do anything because she was under threat from Fred Lowe that if I had any contact with the child would be taken into care. I didn't know where to turn. I wanted to go and tackle these people. But I went back to London, and very frustrating. My father died of Alzheimer's, and I came back to. I came home for the Christmas 1986, and everything was okay. Went back to London, and then the flat was burgled. Came back to Ireland, and got the full story from Bernadette, and I decided that I couldn't take this. I did not know what was going on or why I had been stopped from seeing my child. When I got back to Ireland, I approached Bernadette and I told her I was going to see the people making the accusations. The first person I went to see was a guy called Fred Lowe, a psychologist in St. James's Hospital, an Englishman. When I went into his room, and I tackled him, what was going on? He told me that they had received a referral that the child had been sexually abused, that there was a videotape of the child saying things about me. I did not know what the actual accusations were. That was to come much later. So I made Fred Lowe. He had been in contact with senior social worker in the same hospital, same unit, and between them they had drawn up conditions for me that I was to hold. And he said to me, ring me back in 6 weeks and we'll let you know. We'll look into it and we'll let you know our opinion. So I went back to London, and I was walking in the docks at the time. After the 6 weeks to the day, I rang up Fred Lowe. There was a phone box in the centre of London, just a phone box. And he told me, no, you can't see your daughter. You sexually abused her. I let the phone fall out of my hands. When I kind of woke up, I walked away. I was standing on the edge of the dock. I was looking into the water. I could not believe that after writing this man, telling him everything, honestly, and making the agreement with him that he would turn around and say such a thing. I was devastated. I had nowhere to turn to, no one to turn to. I went to social services in London, and they told me they could do nothing because it was an Irish problem. I went to the hospital in Hackney to find out what was going on. They could tell me nothing. They could only tell the mother. I had no rights. I wasn't married, although the child was mine. So I decided then I would come home and I would fight them. So I came home and I went to see the social worker first. a woman called Elinchik. She was only passed out of college as a social worker. I was the first case she got. And I tried to talk to her. And she said to me, "We have videotapes. You did it. And from what we know about you, we'll never let you see your child again." I then went down to the Rotunda Hospital to where Dr. Maura Woods had a sexual assault treatment unit. And she knew it was coming. I had made arrangements to meet her. And I knocked on the door. And my father had died, as I said, and I was on crutches. I had broken my leg. And she opened the door. I said, "I'm Eddie Hernon. I'd like to see the videotapes of what the child said about me." I still did not know the accusations. So she said to me, "Well, videotapes, sometimes we lose them, sometimes they're erased, sometimes we don't keep them." And I turned on her and I said, "You know what you have done." And I walked away. There was not much I could say about this woman was not going to listen to me. And I limped away my crutches. I then went to the Free Legal Aid Centre here in Dublin, Norman Key, and I spoke to a solicitor there named Tom Nally. So we decided that we would go to court. We would go to the district court, family law court. We would get the medical records. We would look for the video. We would look for whatever evidence we could get. And Bernadette agreed with me, and she agreed with the plan of action. I came home for the Christmas. This was 1988. And we were supposed to go into court early 1989, on the 5th of January. Before that, I had met another social worker named Peggy Finnan, a nun. She was reasonable. But she made a remark to Elinchik at a meeting. "You know, there is no substantive evidence." That meant nothing. So then it came to court before a judge called Hernon on the 5th of January, 1989. And Bernadette had got a free legal aid solicitor, which she was entitled to, named Frank Murphy. When Murphy heard that we were looking for the medical records and the videotapes, he told her not to give her consent, that to go against the health board would be the wrong thing to do. The health board then called Bernadette in to Lord Edward Street at a meeting, and they told her that if she continued with her consent, they would take the child. So right up to the doors of the court, this was the attack being taken by the health board, the social workers. They had no solicitor present. Bernadette had this guy called Murphy. The family law courts, you're called in on your own. The thing is in camera. I got in there anyway, and Tom Nally was there for me. And we were waiting for Bernadette to come in. And Bernadette's solicitor came in and said, my client won't take my instructions, so I'm withdrawing from the case. Bernadette had told them that she was not going to go ahead with what the social workers wanted. We wanted to see the medical records and the videotape, the alleged videotape. So he walked and he left Bernadette there. When I got into the courtroom, there were 3 people sitting to one side. The social worker Lynchick, the social worker Finnan, and Dr. Maura Woods from the Sexual Assault Treatment Unit of the Rotunda. And she had a plastic bag with her. So Judge Hernon wanted to know what was going on. I did not know where these people had come from. We had not subpoenaed them. It was only later I found out that Frank Murphy, the solicitor for Bernadette, he had subpoenaed them. So Tom Nally, he opened the case by calling Dr. Maura Woods to give evidence. She said she had examined the child. The child was overstretched, that the child had drawn a snowman with a penis, and that I had abused the child, sexually abused the child. I sat in that courtroom. I could not believe what was being said. I could not put any questions. I could not cross-examine. I thought Nally would do that. Nally then turned and he called the 2 social workers. Then the judge called me to give evidence. I spoke to the judge. I told him I was living in London. And the judge asked me, what about access? And I said, I'd be able to come home once a month for access to my daughter. He agreed to it. And we left the courtroom. When we got outside the courtroom, Bernadette went one way, and I called Nally, my solicitor, and I said to him, no, what had happened was in the well of the court was the psychologist, Fred Lowe. I was put forward right now that a second opinion. And he said no. A second opinion at this stage would not be in the child's interest. So that was the second opinion gone. Nally did not ask about the medical records. But we were outside and I said, no, why didn't you ask about the medical records and the videotape? And he turned to me and he says, I forgot. This was a man that represented me, knew the story, had gone in and had called these 3 people the evidence against me. So when we left the court, I gave Nally instructions to sue them for what they had done. Nally said, well, you can let me have your instructions. Now, at that time, pre-legal aid didn't take on civil cases like that. So I went back to London, knowing that I had access once a month. I would have to come home for it. So I came home in February of 1989. And access was held in a place called Park House up on the North Circular Road. It was offices there were used by the Eastern Health Board. So it was set for 2 o'clock under the direction of the psychologist Fred Lowe. When I got there, they put me into a room on my own. And I could look down and I could see the taxi arriving and Bernadette and her mother and my daughter getting out of the car and coming up. They kept me in that room for the best part of an hour and a half before I was brought into a little room. And going into this little room, there was another little room off that. And the two social workers were sitting behind a two-way mirror. If you can imagine it. I'm going in there to say, my daughter, I haven't seen her for close on 3 years. The atmosphere, you could cut it with a knife. There was very good reaction between myself and the child, but you could feel the tension in Bernadette and her mother. So suddenly, the grandmother jumped up and a row developed with the social workers. Bernadette took the child and ran out screaming. I stunned at what was going on. Never seen anything like it. They just ran out. And the grandmother, very dumb woman, she was quite prepared to attack the two social workers for what was being done to us. It was the most inhuman thing that could happen. You know that they're watching. You know they're looking at every move. You're frightened. Am I doing the right thing? And anyway, it ended up very badly. So I went back to London after that access. I could not complain to anybody. I came home then in March for the next access visit. And this time it was just one social worker there. And there was no two-way mirror used this time. She just sat in. It was still inhuman because this social worker had it in her head that I had sexually abused my daughter. And she wasn't seeing anything else. It was horrendous. But anyway, it went off, wasn't too bad, and I returned to London. And then I came home the next month. for the third access, supervised access. And I got a letter in England saying that the access arrangements had been changed from Park House to St. James's Hospital and the child psychiatry unit. So I arranged with Bernadette that we would go up, the three of us, myself, Bernadette, and the child, to meet these people. So when we got up there, Bernadette and the child were brought in. They spoke with whoever was in the room, and then I was called in. And Fred Lowe was there with the social worker, Lynchick. Lowe looked at me and he said, you know, Mr. Hernon, we're pulling out of it. You won't be seeing any social workers anymore. You're not going to be bothered, and neither is the child's mother or the child. You will never see us again. And I said, so what about the last 3 fucking years? He says, forget about it and start again. In a way, walked out relieved. You know, that they wouldn't be coming in on top of Bernadette again. There were no more threats of taking the child into care. So I went back to London and decided I was coming back to Ireland for good. One of the reasons I had left, the main reason I had left Ireland in 1985, was that I had a little business and people had come in looking for protection money from me. I paid for a while. I knew who they were. And then I decided that was it. And I went to the police to report. But the threat was still there. It was ever present. I decided then, because the police had arrested one of them, I knew my life was under threat. So I slept in different people's houses, sofas, keep out of the way. Eventually, I approached paramilitaries to help me, to get these people to leave me alone, and let me get back to my life. In the long run, I decided I would pack up and go to London. I was that afraid. I left behind a wife with 5 children, a partner, Bernadette, and a daughter, Cherie. I went over to London. And that's where the rumors started. In 1989, I come back to Ireland. I got another solicitor. And the court cases, we re-entered the court cases. And letters were written between my solicitors and the solicitors for Dr. Woods and the health board. And I went down to the law library. I wanted to get a good barrister. I got a barrister. His name is Paddy McEntee, very famous criminal lawyer, barrister. And he agreed to take on my case. And he took it on for £500 in cash. The solicitors represented me for £50 cash in each appearance in the district court. But I'll give them their due. They did get me information that I needed. We went looking for the videotapes and we got responses from Dr. Wood's solicitors. There were no videotapes. They never existed. So we went back into court. And the health board, the social workers at this time, they transferred the case from Lord Edward Street out to Clonskey to a different group of social workers who came on board. They made contact with St. John of God's up in Rackgar, child and family people up there. And all of this was arranged because of a case conference that had been held the same year. At the case conference, Woods appeared at the case conference, the first one. And it was agreed at the case conference that they wanted to get the child on her own with other experts where they could extract an accusation against me. The people in Rackgar agreed with it. They even went into court to challenge me that I wouldn't attend meetings, which I did. These people between Rackgar and John of God's and the Eastern Health Board, they covered up the whole dirty mess for Dr. Woods and the social workers. The case came on for hearing again on the 19th of December, 1989. We went into court and I had Paddy McEntee and a different solicitor, Chris Ryan. But I knew if I could get into court, say what happened, get these people up on the stand, cross-examine them, we get at the truth. I would get a hearing, a fair hearing. I was entitled to natural justice and fair procedures, which I had not been getting. Consultation took place between Paddy McEntee and Harry Colley, the solicitor for the Health Board. Colley, on behalf of the Health Board, withdrew the accusations against me on the basis there was no evidence to warrant a fit person order in relation to the child. That was it. Case over. But Mr. Hernon, you attend Orwell Road yourself, Bernadette and the child, not for therapy, but to help us come to terms with what had happened. But that wasn't what they wanted. They wanted to interview the child on her own. I wasn't having that because I knew they were looking for another validation or for a validation. That whole plan they had fell apart. In later years, when I discovered the medical records and I found out what I had been accused of, I had been accused of raping my infant daughter in a bath, and I had been doing it for years. That I was a cruel father, that I had a drug addict, that I was a drug addict, that I had access to guns, that I was wanted by the police. All lies. All lies. That's the report that was sent by Maura Woods to Fred Lowe in St. James's Hospital. Later years was to find out that Woods had destroyed her original report in the Rotunda Hospital, and she falsified 3 different reports, which we have. She omitted any mention of videotapes. She omitted any mention of anatomically correct dolls, snowman with penis, or anything like that. So I asked Paddy McIntyre, would we take the case to High Court? And he told me to bring the matter further, the problems will be insurmountable. That decided me that I will go down to the law library myself, to the High Court, and I would sue them myself. So I went down and I asked, how do I go about it? And the staff behind the counter at that time, they were very, very helpful. They helped me draw up the plenary summons. And I sued Ireland, the state, the Attorney General, the Rotunda Hospital, and the Minister for Health, and the Health Board. I had no solicitor, nothing, knew nothing. But I knew once I got this summons served on them, they would know I was coming after them. I could not find a barrister or a solicitor that would forward the case for me. So I had to do all my own work. I contacted media, telling them about what has happened to me. At the time, the first journalist I ever spoke to was a guy called John Shields, who worked for the Star. And he did an article on it. That article has vanished. I looked for other groups and people that would help me. There was no one to help me or advise me. So I had to start from scratch. Social workers had gone. The experts had gone. The lawyers didn't really want to know. So I was on my own. I split up from Bernadette. She wouldn't live with me anyway, while the accusation was still there. I joined a group called the Separated People's Association. And in there, I was never afraid of speaking out about what had happened to me. And within that organization, the SPA, I came across other people who have been falsely accused of molesting their children. I was working at the time, so I formed a group called the Accused Parents Aid Group. And the media helped me get it out public. And before long, I was being inundated with people all over the country saying they had been falsely accused. Now, I'm not saying everybody was falsely accused. When I was 9 years old, I was in the Boy Scouts of Ireland, the Franciscan troop on Merchants Quay. When one of the leaders there sexually abused me in an upstairs room, which was to destroy my life. I didn't tell anybody about it. I was ashamed of it, that this could happen to me. So I didn't put it to the back of my mind. I never forgot the experience. It wasn't a recovered memory or anything like that. It's as plain today as it was then, all those years ago. I know sexual abuse takes place. I know there are people who do it. I traveled the length and breadth of Ireland interviewing people who had been falsely accused. I'm a good judge of character, and it's easy to know. Well, it's not that easy to know, but you can feel when a person is telling you the truth. And I heard horror stories. Horror stories. I had gone to England to meet up with a group in England. This is around the time of the Cleveland scandal. And the name of the group was PAIN, Parents Against Injustice, run by a woman called Sue Amplet. And they were fighting false accusations, and mainly of child sexual abuse. There was never, ever any accusations of cruelty to children. I never came across it. All it was, I think he's interfering with my daughter or with my son. And once an accusation is made, it cannot be retracted. You know, Finbarr, it's 37 years now. My name has never been cleared. I've never got an apology for what was done to me. My daughter and her mother and the other people that I know about who never got an apology, whose children were taken and placed in care, children who should never have been placed in care. I've talked to these mothers and fathers. We were all, 99% of us, working class people, born in the tenements and living in run-down accommodation. We were under attack. We were easy targets for these people, these professional people. In a court of law, We didn't know what to say. But the professional people, the social workers, the psychologists, the psychiatrists, the solicitors, they all knew what to say. We did not stand a chance. And to this day, the same thing applies to people going through the family law courts. I walked away from this many years ago. I couldn't take the pressure. 2011 really finished it for me. 2011, the case that I had taken in 1992, the High Court case came for hearing. It was settled out of court. Because you got a scrap paper. Like, I have it here somewhere. It doesn't say an awful lot. So basically, it wasn't really an apology. It's just that they said there was no place to review these cases or to give people back their good names. I personally got compensation of €250,000. Mother and daughter got a similar amount, but split in two. I hadn't got it 2 weeks before a solicitor who had acted for me sued me and another legal firm because he wasn't getting his costs. So, talk about greed. They put in a bill of costs, €911,000. But anyway, going back, at the time I was working and I had a card under my arse. I would listen to the radio. I would follow what was going on. I kept up to date with what was being said. The infamous X case. I would listen to it on the radio. And mention came in about medical council inquiries. So I made a complaint to the medical council about Dr. Maura Woods. They came back to me and asked me, did I know of any other cases? And I said, yes. And I brought 6 other families along with me to make the complaints. I bought stuff from America, books. That laid out what had happened, how all this child sex abuse industry had come about. For the people that I brought along with me, one family, we put in 21 transcripts of a court case, which involved the president of the district court, Peter Smitty. A horrific case. But the Medical Council, we put in the reports. That was 1992. In 1996, the Medical Council, their solicitors wrote back to me and telling me that there was a prima facie case against Dr. Maura Woods, which warrants an inquiry into her professional misconduct. I was over the moon. So the inquiry started. Dr. Woods got the message that the medical council were going to look into her. She sold up all her property here as she buggered off to Tuscany in Italy. And where she stayed for a long time. It took the medical council placed discovery orders on the Eastern Health Board for the medical records. During the early hearings with the medical council, the Fitness to Practice Committee, I fought for and won a public inquiry on behalf of the complainants. The Eastern Health Board, HSC, whatever you like to call them, they took judicial review proceedings in front of Mr. Justice Barr to have that decision overturned. And they had that public inquiry turned into a private inquiry. So the truth of what happened in relation to the setting up of the Rotunda Hospital Sexual Assault Treatment Unit, that the damage had been done, was well covered up. Dr. Woods was protected. The social workers were protected. But a year later, it came on for hearing before the Fitness to Practice Committee. And the chairman of the Fitness to Practice Committee was a woman called Professor Patricia Casey, a very well-known psychiatrist. But there was no way that anybody within government were going to let Patricia Casey run this inquiry in private, in public. So for the best part of 5 years, it was bogged down in legal arguments until a new Fitness to Practice Committee was elected. And then the hearings came on in Lynn House up in Portobello. We were represented, the complainants were represented by the registrar, by the late Judge Senior Counsel, Kevin Feeney, Portamer, Owen McCullough, Junior Counsel. Woods was represented by Eugene Gleason, Mary Finley Gagan, she was Senior Counsel, and a solicitor called Andrew Walker. That medical council was voted out of office and a new medical council came in, new Fitness to Practice Committee came in. A whole different group of people. They came in and they went along with the private inquiry. And they made our life very, very difficult. I won the right to attend the hearings, the general hearings and the hearings in my own case. Of the 5 cases I put in, 7 in fact, 5 they ran with. 3 they found Maura Woods guilty of professional misconduct. In the other 2 they said that the registrar hadn't proved his case beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, I never took this on for myself. It was for the other people, their children, what had happened to their children, how they've been taken and put into care, how the people could not do anything, no education, no nothing, no money. I fought for them. I always knew I would win against them. I didn't know how difficult it would be, but I always knew that the people that went along, none of them got an apology. One family got compensation. They had 4 or 5 children. They got peanuts. Another chap, they had mercy on him, shortly after the inquiry was over, he died of cancer. Recently, I spoke with the family from the north side of the city, and they have not forgotten.
Tell me, Edward, it's years later. I can still see the hurt inside you. Do you think, I won't use the word forgiveness, do you think you'll ever find peace about this?
It's in my mind. The last thing when I go to sleep, the first thing I wake up, the injustice of the whole thing. The people I contacted, the people who knew what this woman was doing and did nothing.
And Edward, your daughter actually supported you through this, and as an adult, continued to support you in this fight, didn't she?
What she said to Pat Kenny, she said, you know, I had to ask a doctor to allow my father to go to my first Holy Communion.
Yeah. And she went on Pat Kenny with you to support you when eventually you won and you were getting some media recognition for the injustice that you had gone through. And I think that ultimately is a big part of this, that you and your daughter were still able to stay together through this.
When I was 24 years old, I jumped into the Liffey to save a 7-year-old boy from drowning. And I received a certificate of bravery. My daughter got involved in a fire in the flat where her grandfather and grandmother lived. My daughter saved her grandfather from death, and she was awarded a medal for bravery.
But the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Sorry?
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Well, she was awarded a medal for bravery and a similar certificate to me.
Yeah. Edward, I wanted, first of all, to thank you for telling your story tonight, and we're going to get it out there so that the people can see it again, because I know you're eager. When you contacted us originally, you had said that you have a room full of files here, and you're getting older, and you don't want them just to end up in a skip, and that you'd like your story put on celluloid, if you want to put it that way, so that other people can access it into the future. Thanks for joining us, Edward. We're going to have a discussion on this particular case, your particular case, in our next program, and we're going to discuss it in the context of other things that are happening and what appears to me to be the continued pathological behaviour of social services in this country.